When I was a couple weeks short of my 70th birthday, I started thinking about my mother's mother, who lived to be 100, and her mother, who lived to be 102, and my father, who lived to be 90, longer than anyone we had ever heard of in his family. I began to think that maybe our generation could be the first to routinely live to be 100. When I talked about this at family dinner one night, my granddaughter, who was 5, said,
"What are you going to do for the next 30 years, Grandpa?"
Hello, I'm Dr. Janet Price.
And I'm Gregg Kaloust. And we are Oldish. And this is our podcast, Oldish.
If you're oldish or know someone who is, please join us every week for conversations amongst ourselves
And our special guests
about what it means to be oldish in the 21st century.
If you ever wonder whether you're getting old, you're oldish. What are you going to do for the next 30 minutes? Hi, I'm Gregg, and I'm oldish.
Hi, I'm Janet, and I'm oldish. Welcome to this episode of our podcast, Oldish Conversations on Aging in the 21st Century. Gregg, happy St. Patrick's Day today.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you, Janet. We are both of Irish heritage to a certain extent. You're actually more Irish than I am in terms of genetics.
Yeah.
So today is an important holiday for us. So, sláinte.
Sláinte.
Sláinte, yes. That's what Irish would say when raising a glass of Guinness or Murphy's or whatever your libation is of choice, and it means to good health.
Well, sláinte to you also and to all of our listeners. So I'm wondering what comes up for you when you hear St. Patrick's Day, that it's coming, it's here. I've tended at times, what comes to my mind from being in this country is leprechauns and bags of gold at the end of the rainbow and drinking and green. I was wondering what comes up for you and whether we can expand today on those stereotypes to talk a little bit more realistically about what it means to be Irish, what it means to come to this country, to be an immigrant, and what comes up around that in general. St. Patrick's Day is, in a way, at this moment for us, a symbolic of immigrants.
I heard today that, among other things, that St. Patrick is the patron saint of immigrants, which makes a lot of sense given the prevalence of Irish immigrants in the United States. I think it's important to talk about the status of the Irish as immigrants, because their story was fairly typical in sequence over the years. There was a huge wave of Irish immigration during the famine in the 1840s and 1850s. And the story that was told at the time was that who was coming here from Ireland was poor, uneducated, dirty peasants who were not going to be able to improve our country at all. There was no legal way to keep them out, but the Irish were not exactly welcomed here. In Boston and New York City, where many of them first landed, they couldn't find work. There were signs up all over the place, Irish need not apply.
At best, and then some signs, no Irish, no black, no dogs allowed. So got pretty down and dirty about you are not welcome. And I just want to go back for a second and then I'll leave it. But just the reality that when we have a holiday, whether today for the Irish or other days, that sometimes that holiday minimizes or stereotypes that group of people. And that's how the rest of the country think about the Irish. And that seems incredibly sad to me.
Yeah, it is kind of sad. I read someplace over the weekend that something like 60% of Americans celebrate St. Patrick's Day, even though something like 10% of Americans have Irish heritage. 60% celebrate St. Patrick's Day. It's kind of like the Super Bowl. It's a good excuse for a party. But even before when I was saying about coming over during the famine, even before that, the Irish were brought here by English colonists, essentially as slaves. When I was growing up, they were described as indentured servants. they were paid, but then they had to pay back the costs of being brought over here, which they never could do because they never made enough money to pay back the supposed cost of being brought over here. So they were essentially enslaved and were the first major slave class in the English colonies in New England and elsewhere. So the Irish were not welcomed here. A lot of people don't know that Ellis Island was actually set up as a way to control the immigration of people from Ireland. We didn't have laws against Irish immigrants, but the word was that they were uneducated, they were dirty, they were sick, they were carriers of disease, they were criminals. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was just thinking, what is it about change, difference that causes up to this moment people to be afraid, to need to stereotype that group in really horrible ways?
Political power is that people learned probably millennia ago that if you want to have political power, you gain it. One of the main ways to gain it is to say to the people who might vote for you, those people, those others are bad. The others are bad. And the way to protect you from the bad is to have me be in charge. And I will protect you from the bad. I will drive them from our shores. I will round up the gang members and put them on a plane to Venezuela or wherever they sent these guys over the weekend. So there are politicians and wealthy people who benefit by maintaining another. And if you're busy hating these poor people who have nothing, you won't notice that the reason that you also have nothing is me, is that as a politician or a mega wealthy person gathering up all the wealth, you won't notice that the reason that you don't have enough is not because the poor people are taking it away from you. It's because the rich people are taking it away from you. And it's important that you don't notice that. If I were a rich, powerful person or wanted to be, one of the methods that I might use is to make sure that you didn't notice that the reason that you're poor is me. So I would want you to say, it's those people over there. They're taking your jobs. They are coming here, taking your jobs. I had a relative back around the first time that Knucklehead ran for president who said, I'm voting for him because these immigrants are coming here taking our jobs. And I said, what are you talking about? You're retired. What job are they taking? They're not taking your job. You don't even have one. It's always, no, I don't know about always, but it sure seems like our history is that we will identify the people who want to be in power, identify an other and demonize them and distract your attention as a regular person from them stealing from you. White collar crime is way worse than regular crime.
Well, and I wonder if along with that is the struggle people seem to have around how to welcome diversity, how to embrace it, how to be curious rather than afraid. I'm sure it's all mixed in together as far as the people in power, political power, know that groups of people can be afraid because they might take their jobs, or who are they, or why do they eat that food, or why do they dress that way, or what language are they speaking? I can't understand them. And, all the things that can come up on some level with newness. And then maybe along with that, when the political power is saying, yes, be afraid of those people. And we're going to tell you why. Because I was just thinking about, for us as Oldish, what is it like for us to be in this moment, not only today on St. Patrick's Day, but also, the orange one who's in office, why is there so much pull towards fear? And I was going to say hatred, but fear. And what is it like for us looking back over these years that we've been alive and seeing this happening right now?
Yeah, it's baffling to me. America was built by immigrants. What we think of the United States of America, everybody except for Native Americans, and they probably came here across the Russian land bridge, right? They came over from Mongolia, theoretically, around over the land or over the ice or whatever it was. So if you go back far enough, even they were immigrants here. But ever since then, everybody that's come into the country and everybody that's here now is descended from immigrants. So unless you're 100% Native American, you are at least in part descended from immigrants. And it seems to me that the immigrants have been, and it goes in waves and cycles. So my some number back great grandfather came over during the famine. He was Irish. His children were Irish. They married Irish people and so on. But 2 generations later, I don't know if it was his granddaughter or his great granddaughter, was my grandmother, and she married an Armenian refugee. Her father, who was descended from people who were reviled, disowned her because she married somebody who was the other. So her sister married his friend, who was also Armenian. He disowned her too. Their brother said, "Screw you, Dad, that's messed up." And he went to live with his 2 sisters and the
Wow.
Armenian guys.
Mhm.
So it goes in cycles like that. The Irish were the lowest class of immigrants until the Italians started showing up in numbers. Then they were replaced by the Italians. And that's why you have things like there's a movie, The Gangs of New York, where it was the Italians fighting the Irish. And later on, they both fought the Puerto Ricans. It just moved in waves. The next group in is the lowest. And so we have to have somebody to hate, so we'll hate them. Or we have to have somebody that's lower than we are, so we choose them.
Well, and speaking of movies and books, I had the privilege of seeing Hamilton recently on Broadway, and I was so moved by that musical and that historical musical. And I felt like everyone should be watching that right now because they're so relevant to this reality that this country was and this government and was built by immigrants. And it's so important to not forget that, to celebrate it.
Yeah, we definitely want to celebrate that. One of the things to note about St. Patrick is that St. Patrick is an example of, this has been going on forever. The story behind St. Patrick is that he was British. And when he was a kid, he was kidnapped by Irish pirates and brought to Ireland, where he was enslaved as a sheepherder. And later on, he escaped and went back to England. This is 575 AD. So this is all taking place 1,500 years ago. So England and Ireland were relative terms. They don't exist as the way we think of them today. But anyways, he was captured and enslaved, escaped, and then came back later on. And he brought Christianity to Ireland and drove out all the pagans, or drove out or converted all the pagans. So this otherness stuff has been going on practically forever. Are there bright sides to this? This seems like this is all kind of grim, isn't it?
Well, let's think about it. I want to bring in the theme of oldishness, and I don't know if this is bringing in any brightness, but how do we look at this now at this point in our lives, in our 70s, and for listeners, 60s, 70s, 80s? Is there a bright side? Actually, I'm not sure if I can think of one other than that it gives us, you and me, in this moment, an opportunity with our listeners to celebrate the diversity that makes us who we are as a country. And what else?
So I would say, yes, we celebrate the diversity without immigrants of various kinds. This, unless go back all the way to the just Native Americans here, but since the colonies happened, if it weren't for diversity, America would not be the great place that it is. So I cherish diversity. Equality is a question that's come up partially because back in the day, the Irish were poor. The English were rich. The Dutch were rich. So the equality, because of the diversity, if we're going to value diversity, everybody should be equal. And it's economic equality and it's equality under the law. So diversity and equality are pretty important. And then shutting people out of our culture and our society and our way of life for whatever reasons, whether it's because of their religion or their sexuality or their gender or their abilitiness as opposed to disability, their
race,
all of those things. Yeah, everybody should be included. So diversity, equality, and inclusion. Oh yeah, where have I heard that recently? No kidding. Where have I heard that recently? I probably have always been a liberal, but I think now in my oldishness, I understand and feel more that, the more the merrier, that other people are our wealth. Other people are what make us rich. And if we have other people in our lives, we are wealthy indeed.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well said. One of the things that encourages me is at this point in my life is looking at what's happening with younger generations today, that there's many, many more interracial couples. There's many more families of color, families that are diverse within their own family. And the reality that we're moving towards a population in this country that's going to be brown, and a large percentage will be Latino. And so that encourages me because I feel like no matter what kind of whatever is going on right now around hate and exclusion, that seems so discouraging to me. And I feel like when I look back at the years of my life so far, over all these decades, I wanted to believe that we were moving towards a place of more acceptance, diversity, equality, inclusion. It doesn't feel like that right now, and that's very discouraging. So I have to try to look at the big picture, both in what is happening and also what I believe in my heart for each of us as human beings, that we want to be kind, we want to be inclusive, we want to be accepting, we want to celebrate who we all are. It's just that so much pulls us away from that, pulls some people away from that.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I'm hoping, here's some hopefulness. I'm hoping that what we're seeing in our politics here now is the last gasp of the exclusionary, of the non-diverse, of the unequal, and that what'll come out the other side of this will be more diverse, more equal, more inclusionary, if they don't break it. My anxiety is that they're capable of actually smashing it. But if they're not capable, if those of us who feel this way, and it seems to be the majority of people, if those of us who feel this way say, no, you ain't doing that, we're not going to let you do that, whatever that means, then they won't actually smash it. And what'll come out the other side will be a country that can elect a good Irishman like Barry Obama to be president.
Yes. Hear, hear.
How's that? Is that good enough?
Yes.
Okay.
Is Obama part Irish?
I have no idea, but his name sounds Irish, doesn't it? Barry Obama?
Not the Obama part, I don't think, but maybe Barry.
Well, there's oh this and oh that, O'Brien, O'Donovan, O'Malley. Yeah, the old part.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. So, yeah, Barry of the Bama clan. My former wife's name was Donovan, but originally it was O'Donovan because there was some Irish king or lord or something named Donovan, and everybody after that was O'Donovan of the Donovans.
Wow.
Or of the Donovan's clan, or of the Malley clan. So if your name is O'Malley, or of the O'Malley clan. Yeah, so Obama must be of the Obama clan.
Okay.
There's a little lesson in Irish etymology for you there, folks.
Yes. So
Well, as usual, I feel better after visiting with you, Janet. And I think that's a good thing. And
good thing. I'm happy to visit with you today, Greg, and with all of our listeners, and being able to come together and talk about what a day like St. Patrick's Day can bring up for each of us, and hopefully encourage celebration of what makes all of us who we are, our individuality and our similarities.
Yes. And so I would close then with the well-known Celtic term namaste, which means the Irish in me greets the Irish in you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Janet. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it for now. Thanks for listening. We hope we got your Irish up. We're no longer using affiliate links to Amazon. We are now affiliates for bookshop.org. The great thing about Bookshop is that if you purchase a book there, you can choose a local or other independent bookstore, and Bookshop will send them a portion of the purchase price. If you buy a book there after clicking our link, we'll also get a commission that will go towards supporting our podcast. We'll be going back through show notes and web pages of our older podcasts to change book links over to Bookshop. Upcoming episodes include a visit with podcaster Jeff Armstrong, host of the podcast Aging Well, a return visit with one of our most popular guests, Joan Price, with whom we'll be discussing her recently updated book Sex After Grief, and the next meeting of the Oldish Book Club. We're reading Hemingway's The Oldish Man and the Sea. Stay tuned for these and other guests coming up in the next weeks. You can leave comments or requests for topics or guests on this or other episodes at www.oldish.me. There's a link there, too, if you've wondered how you can help support our podcast. If you like what you heard today, please tell a friend and rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.